I let an HOA build 512 homes on my land, and I never said a word. Not when they cursed me out. Not when they called the sheriff. Not even when their president told me she owned my property. Today, I'm walking into court with one thing they never expected: the deed. Most folks online already know that part. What they don't know is how a quiet middle-aged structural engineer ended up at the center of the biggest land grab scandal this state has ever seen. My name's Logan Hale, 52 years old enough to know better, young enough to still swing when life swings first. And life had swung hard. The morning I parked my old Ford in front of the Boulder County Courthouse, I was wearing the only suit I own, the same one I wore to my daughter's college graduation 7 years ago. It didn't sit right on me anymore. Age has a way of changing a man's shoulders, and so does carrying a fight you didn't ask for. The February wind rolled off the Rockies, dry and sharp enough to cut through wool. People drifted across the plaza, lawyers with shiny shoes, parents holding folders, reporters hunting blood in the water. Inside my briefcase was a single document older than most of them, a yellowed, tobacco-scented deed, signed by my grandfather in 1974. Every time my fingers brushed that paper, I could hear his voice again. If someone ever comes for what's ours, Logan, don't let the bastards take it. For most of my life, I thought he was just being dramatic. Turns out, he knew this world better than I did. As I walked toward the courthouse steps, cameras flashed, clicking like hail on a tin roof. A reporter pushed forward and shouted, "Mr. Hale, are you really about to evict 500 families?" I didn't even turn my head. If there's one thing I've learned in 52 years, it's that you don't argue with a crowd holding pitchforks made of opinions. Everything that mattered would be said inside. And then, ahead of me, the tall wooden doors of courtroom 4C opened. For a moment, the whole world tightened into silence. That strange, heavy quiet right before a storm breaks. If you'd told me a year ago that I'd be standing here, dragging a multi-million-dollar developer, a corrupt HOA board, and half a dozen lawyers into court, I would have laughed, hard. But life has teeth, and some people only understand justice when it finally bites. So, I adjusted the too-tight collar of that old suit, took a breath, and stepped inside, ready to tell the judge exactly how 512 homes ended up on land that never stopped belonging to me. And that is where the real story begins. Before we get to the part with the forged documents, the bulldozers, and the HOA president who could glare a man into dust, you need to know where all this started. My grandfather, Walter Hale, bought those acres of mountain woodland back in 1974, paid cash. No loans, no partners, no promises, just a canvas bag full of bills from millwork and mechanic jobs, the kind of labor that leaves grooves in a man's hands forever. The land wasn't small either, 320 acres of ridge, ravine, timber, and sky, the kind of place where you could walk half a day and never circle back to your own tracks. The kind of place where a man could disappear on purpose and still sleep well. He told me once he bought it because it reminded him of the one thing he thought he'd never feel again after Vietnam: quiet. Granddad wasn't poetic, but sometimes a man says something without meaning to write scripture, and it lands anyway. We spent summers on that property, a beat-up airstream under ponderosa pines, coffee boiling in a dented percolator, me running around barefoot, following elk tracks, him sharpening tools on a whetstone, humming off-key. He'd say things like, "Trees don't lie, Logan. Men do. Pick which one you want as company." And he kept everything. Every receipt, every survey map, every timber sale, tucked inside leather-bound ledgers that smelled like tobacco and old rain. Those ledgers would end up saving my entire case. When he passed in 2016, he left the land to me. Inside the deed was a note in his thin, stubborn handwriting: "Don't let the bastards take what's yours." At 46, I thought he was warning me about something hypothetical. At 52, I realized he'd seen the world clearer than I ever had. After he died, life pulled me in every direction. Divorce, kids hitting adulthood, 14-hour shifts at the engineering firm, trying to keep the pieces of myself from drifting too far apart. People love to say, if you cared, you'd make time. But the truth is simpler. Sometimes you stay away because it hurts too much to walk through old memories alone. So I didn't visit the land, not for months. Then months became seasons. Then seasons stacked themselves into years. But every April, like clockwork, I paid the property taxes. $8 a year for those 320 acres of untouched woodland. Paid from job sites, parking lots, even once during a Zoom meeting when my boss thought I was taking notes. Never late, never skipped. It wasn't until August of last year, when my daughter asked where I planned to scatter Granddad's ashes, that I realized how long it had been. So, I loaded the ashes into the passenger seat, grabbed a thermos of coffee, and headed up the mountain road, hoping the land would still feel like the place I used to love. But the first thing I noticed was the pavement. New, smooth, too wide for a county budget. Then a turn lane that had never existed. Then gravel berms, survey markers, tiny signs that the world had been rearranged without my permission. And then, the stone monument. Polished granite, tall as a headstone, ridgeline meadows, a Whitmore luxury community est. 23. My land didn't have a name. It didn't have a community. It had a man's life poured into the soil and a promise written into a deed older than most people in Boulder. I stared at that sign and whispered, "Granddad." They took it anyway. But I hadn't seen the houses yet, the streets, the moving vans, the gatehouse, or the rattlesnake in designer heels waiting behind it, the HOA president who would soon make the worst mistake of her life. That part was still ahead, and it would change everything. I rolled the truck past the stone monument with a sick feeling building behind my ribs. Ridgeline Meadows, a name carved in granite like it had always belonged there. The paved road that followed used to be a dirt two-track my grandfather and I drove up in an old Ford. Now it was 6 inches of fresh asphalt, smooth as a dealership showroom floor. I eased forward. At first, all I saw were treetops. Then the world opened, and the ridge dropped away into a sight that swallowed the breath right out of me. Houses, hundreds of them, sprawled across my 320 acres like a harvest someone forgot to ask permission for. From this rise in the road, you could see the whole bowl of the valley. Street grids, cul-de-sacs, rooftops, landscaped medians, even what looked like a clubhouse dome shimmering in the sun. The kind of view a developer would show off in brochures. The kind of view a landowner shouldn't be seeing for the first time. I drove down toward what looked like a cluster of buildings at the base of the community. Big banners read, "Model homes open daily, sales center." Of course, model homes sit outside the main gate, where the public can wander freely. That's where I saw them. A mom pushing a stroller, a man checking out a spec house porch, a couple arguing over siding colors. They smiled at me as if I were another buyer dreaming about granite countertops and vaulted ceilings. I didn't smile back, couldn't. Their dream was built on my family's bones. I drove slowly around the sales center loop, watching the scene, the artificial charm, the new construction smell, the fake sense of community. Everything looked so polished it was nauseating. Then, past the model homes, the real thing came into view, the main gate. It sat right where my grandfather's old fire road used to begin, a place where he once taught me how to split kindling. Now it was a fortress, stucco gatehouse, Spanish tile roof, 2 lanes, one marked resident, the other guest. Flagpoles, keypad, automatic barrier arm, cameras pointed every direction. A big iron arch read, "Ridgeline Meadows, private HOA community." I pulled up to the guest lane. A security guard stepped out, young, nervous, wearing a tactical vest that was more cosplay than authority. He lifted a hand. "Sir, this gate is for residents and approved visitors only." I didn't answer him, not yet, because standing behind him, framed perfectly by the arch, was her. The rattlesnake in designer heels, tall, polished, hair the kind of blonde you only get from a salon in Cherry Creek. Clip-on HOA badge gleaming in the sun. She wasn't smiling, she was measuring me. The guard tried again, louder. "Sir, I'll need you to turn around unless you have business inside." I reached into the passenger seat, picked up the leather folder, and tapped it with 2 fingers. Then I looked the guard in the eyes and said, "Son, I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be." The guard blinked. People aren't used to calm men, especially older ones who don't raise their voices. The woman stepped forward. "Do you have an address here?" she asked, voice smooth as glass over hidden razors. I pointed past her, to the hundreds of homes stretching across the valley. Then I said the line that would haunt them for months. All of them. Her smile faltered, just a flicker, but it was there. "Sir," she said slowly, "this community is under Ridgeline Meadows HOA jurisdiction. If you have questions, you'll need to make an appointment with our administration office." She gestured toward a sleek glass building on the inside of the gate. I stepped out of the truck, boots touching the asphalt they had poured over my grandfather's trail, every movement deliberate. The guard panicked. "Sir, you can't enter, sir!" But the woman raised her hand. "Let him," she said. "He won't get far." I didn't answer, didn't have to, because in that moment, in the cold quiet between her arrogance and my footsteps, I realized something crystal clear. She didn't know who I was, she didn't know what I held in my hand, and she sure as hell didn't know I owned the dirt under her $1,000 heels. I walked toward the gatehouse, toward the HOA office, toward the war that had already begun. Behind me, the guard murmured, "Who is that guy?" She replied with a shrug, the last confident shrug she would ever make. "Just some old man." Oh, if only she had known. The HOA administration building looked like something out of a resort brochure. Glass walls, stone pillars, a brushed metal logo mounted above the double doors. It didn't belong on my grandfather's ridge. None of it did. I walked up the steps slowly, not because I was tired, but because every inch of concrete under my boots used to be pine needles and dirt. Behind me, the security guard muttered to himself, "Why's he walking like he owns the place?" Because I did. But he'd learn that soon enough. The double doors slid open, cold air rushed out, lavender air freshener, polished floors. That hospital-clean hum you only find in places where people think paperwork is power. A young receptionist smiled from behind a counter. "Good morning, how can I help you today?" I set my leather folder on the counter, gently, almost politely. "I need to speak with whoever's in charge." Her smile twitched. "Do you have an appointment?" "No." "Are you a resident?" "In a way." She hesitated, clearly unsure what box to put me in. Before she could stall further, a familiar rhythm echoed across the tile floor. Heels. Sharp, confident, expensive. The HOA president appeared. Up close, she looked even more like a rattlesnake in designer heels. Tall, perfect hair, clip-on an HOA badge shining like she thought it meant something. "Sarah, I'll take it," she said to the receptionist. She turned to me. "This way, please." Not a request. Not quite an order. Just that special HOA tone that assumes the whole world bends to their architectural guidelines. I followed her into a glass-walled conference room. Inside were shelves of binders. CC&R violations, 23, compliance logs, architectural reviews. She sat. I didn't. "I'm Karen Whitmore," she said, president of the Ridgeline Meadows Homeowners Association. Of course she was named Karen. Some things are too poetic to fight. "What exactly are you here for?" she asked. I placed the leather folder on the table between us. "This land," I said quietly, "belongs to me." She blinked once, then again, and then she smiled, a slow, patronizing smile dripping with condescension. "Oh, you're one of them." "One of who?" "The holdouts," she said, waving a hand. "There are always one or two. People who think they still have claims because they're holding outdated documents or sentimental paperwork." My jaw stiffened. "Nothing about my claim is outdated." She offered a pitying sigh. "Look, I'm sure you believe that, but Whitmore Development legally acquired and annexed this land in 21. All parcels were consolidated. Whatever document you think you have, your deed, or your grandfather's deed, it's not valid." I tapped the leather folder. Her voice softened, manipulative, practiced. "If you'd like, I can help you apply for our relocation assistance. We offer compensation for legacy confusion. A few $1,000s usually solves the issue." The room felt colder, not because of the air conditioning, because of the audacity. I opened the leather folder, slow, deliberate. Inside lay the original deed, yellowed, edges soft with age, smelling faintly of Granddad's pipe smoke. I slid it toward her. She didn't touch it. "Mr. Hale," I said. "Logan Hale." Recognition flickered in her eyes, just a spark, but enough to tell me she had heard the name somewhere in a board meeting and hoped never to meet it in person. She leaned forward. "Mr. Hale, this community is fully operational. People live here. Children go to school here. You can't just walk in and—" "I'm not walking in to claim anything," I said. "I'm here to tell you what already is." Her lips pressed together. "I'm going to have security escort you out," she declared. "And if you return without legal counsel, you will be considered trespassing. This is HOA." Her sentence cut off when a voice came from the doorway. Ms. Whitmore." The security guard stood there, holding a tablet. His face had gone pale. She snapped, "What is it?" He stepped in, hesitant. I tried pulling up the GIS parcel map for this building, just to double-check something." "And?" she demanded. He turned the tablet so she could see. "Well, the parcel ID for this HOA office," he swallowed. "It's coming up as invalid does not exist." Karen stared at him, stunned. "What?" He tapped again. "It's not a valid parcel. There's no lot number, no permit history, no zoning record, nothing. It's like the building isn't legally here." Her face drained of color. I took back the deed, sliding it into the leather folder. "Have a good day, Ms. Whitmore. You're not going anywhere," she snapped. But her voice cracked, because for the first time since she'd built her little empire of fines and rules and power trips, she was standing in a building that, on paper, didn't exist on land that she didn't own. And she knew the truth was already coming for her. I didn't drive home that night. Truth was, I didn't have a home anywhere near Boulder. My old house went to my ex-wife, and my apartment in Golden was too far to risk driving after the day I had had. And something in my gut, something old, animal, and worn by years, told me not to go anywhere predictable. So, I checked into a roadside motel off Highway 36. Room 12, single queen, curtains thin as paper. The kind of place where the air smells like old cigarettes even in the non-smoking rooms. I sat on the edge of the bed, boots still on, staring at the muted TV, trying to digest what I'd seen, what Karen had said, what I had stepped into. Around 8:30, my phone buzzed. "Mr. Hale, this is Deputy Rollins with the Boulder County Sheriff's Office." Just hearing Sheriff's Office made something inside me tighten. He explained, calmly, almost wearily, that the HOA had filed a report accusing me of refusing to leave private property and creating anxiety among residents. "Deputy," I said, "that woman lied to your face, and I told her I had the title." "I hear you," he replied, "but this is a civil matter, and civil matters don't get sorted out at gunpoint in someone's driveway. They get sorted out in court." There was a long pause before he added, "My advice? Get a lawyer, a real one, someone who knows land use law inside and out." I didn't have a pen nearby, so I grabbed the motel napkin from under my coffee cup and scribbled down the name he gave me, Amelia Rhodes. The call ended, and for the next few hours, I let myself believe maybe the night was over. It wasn't, not by a long shot. At 11:45 p.m., someone knocked on my door, hard, sharp, the kind of knock that isn't a question, it's a warning. I looked through the peephole. A man stood there, plain clothes, maybe late 40s, boots too clean for a traveler, posture too balanced for a drunk, eyes too calm for someone doing legitimate work. I opened the door 2 inches, keeping the chain on. He smiled politely, but the smile never touched his eyes. "Evening, Mr. Hale," my voice stayed low. "Do we know each other?" "No, sir, but my employer knows you." There it was, the truth, quick and cold. "What do you want?" "I just came to deliver a message." He lifted a clipboard. "Ridgeline Meadows is issuing a formal no trespass notice. Any return to the property will result in legal action." I stared at him. "That all?" He leaned in, lowering his voice. "Mr. Whitmore prefers his problems quiet. He's hoping you understand that." "That a threat?" "No, sir. Threats sound different." Behind him, a black SUV idled with its headlights off. A silhouette in the driver's seat never turned its head. These weren't HOA volunteers. They weren't code inspectors. They weren't even amateurs. This was the kind of crew developers hire when money is on the line and morality is optional. I shut the door, locked everything, turned off the lights, and sat in the dark. For the first time all day, fear crept in. Not the kind that makes a man run, the kind that makes a man realize he's up against something big. Bigger than an HOA, bigger than Karen, bigger than a zoning error. Something organized, funded, and perfectly willing to play dirty. I reached into my wallet and pulled out the motel napkin, where I had scribbled the name Deputy Rollins had mentioned. Amelia Rhodes. Under it, I'd written a number. I dialed. A voice answered after one ring. "This is Rhodes." She didn't sound tired. She didn't sound annoyed. She didn't even sound surprised to be getting a call near midnight. I heard the click of a lighter, a slow exhale, paper rustling. She was working. "Ms. Rhodes," I said carefully, "my name is Logan Hale. I think someone just tried to scare me off my own land. Tell me everything." So I did. Gatehouse, Karen, the fixer, the threats, the lies, the homes, the deed. She listened without a single interruption. When I finished, there was a long silence. Then, "Mr. Hale, you need to come to my office in the morning." Her tone changed, sharper, colder, surgical. "Because based on what you've described, this isn't an HOA dispute." Another pause. "This is fraud, possibly organized, possibly federal. What do I do tonight?" "Keep the curtains closed," she said. "Don't open the door for anyone. Charge your phone and sleep if you can." "Why?" "Because tomorrow," she said, "we start hunting back." Her lighter clicked again. "And Mr. Hale, bring that deed with you. You're going to need it." Morning sunlight always looks harsher on cheap motel curtains. It came through in thin orange stripes across my boots, my jacket, and the stale motel carpet. I hadn't slept, not really. My brain kept replaying the fixer's words at the door. By 7:10 a.m., I'd showered, shaved, and memorized the deed for the 100th time. Amelia Rhodes' office sat in downtown Denver, an old 4-story brick building wedged between a bail bondsman and a cigar shop. Exactly the kind of place where real legal wars were fought, without marble floors or smiling interns. Her name was stenciled on the door in white serif letters: Amelia Rhodes, ESQ, land use, property rights, title litigation. Inside, the air smelled like coffee, old paper, and a trace of cigarette smoke. She stepped out from a frosted glass door. Gray hair clipped short, black blazer over dark jeans, eyes sharp enough to quarter a log. "You're Hale," she said. "Yes, ma'am." "You bring the deed?" I held up the leather folder. She nodded, the slightest approval. "Follow me." Her office looked like the inside of a general's bunker, maps pinned everywhere, zoning charts spread across tables, a whiteboard full of arrows, dates, and names. "Sit," she said. I sat. "Start from the beginning, slowly." I told her everything: the monument sign, the homes, Karen at the gate, the sheriff, the fixer at my motel door. She listened without interrupting, writing in small, perfect strokes. When I finished, she opened the deed, thumbed the embossed seal, and said quietly, "This is the original. Good." She clicked through county land records on her laptop, parcel numbers, plat maps, zoning codes. Then she froze the screen. "Hale, look." My grandfather's parcel 143A7Z7, appeared with a red flag icon. Owner, unknown, disputed status, pending review, note, document mismatch flagged. My stomach tightened. "What does that mean?" "It means someone tried to record something against your land," she said, "and the system rejected it." She opened the flagged PDF. A quitclaim deed, signed with my name. Only, the signature wasn't mine, not even close. "They forged it," I said. "Oh yes," she replied, calm, cold, sloppy too, probably done in a rush while Phase 1 was breaking ground. She took a slow drag of her cigarette and exhaled through the cracked window. Then she showed me the construction permits, not a single one linked to my parcel number. "Hale," she said, tapping the screen, "every structure on Ridgeline Meadows is sitting on land with no valid chain of title." I rubbed my jaw. "So, what do we do? File a declaratory judgment and freeze the development?" She turned sharply. "No." "No?" She leaned forward, eyes intense. "Hale, listen to me carefully. Freezing the development now is exactly what they're praying for." I frowned. "That makes no sense." "It makes perfect sense," she said. "If we stop them today, they'll claim ignorance. They'll blame a clerk. They'll file bankruptcy, dissolve the LLC, and walk away having made millions from the houses they've already sold." She slid the forged deed back toward me. "They need to finish the scam for it to be a crime." I stared at her. "You're saying, let them keep building?" "I'm saying let them finish everything," she said. "Let them record every fraudulent sale. Let them pocket every dollar. Let them dig the hole deeper, so deep their lawyers can't reach them." She tapped at the county map. Phase 1, 2, 3 all laid out. "Hale, when the last house sells, when the last family moves in, when the HOA collects its first full year of dues, that's when the fraud becomes systemic. And systemic fraud," she added, lowering her voice, "opens the door to RICO." I swallowed. Organized crime? Conspiracy to defraud, wire fraud, mail fraud, forgery, title tampering, zoning manipulation, misrepresentation in interstate commerce. She leaned back. "They won't just owe you damages. They'll owe treble damages, 3 times the profit." I stared at the deed in my hands. "And how much profit is that?" She smirked. "At 512 homes, conservatively, 60 to 80 million. My breath caught. "So, if I wait, I win bigger?" "If you wait," she said, "you win everything. And they lose everything." Her voice softened just a hair. "But I won't lie to you, Hale. Waiting is dangerous. They already sent a fixer to your door. Next time, he won't be alone. I can handle myself." "Yes," she said, "but you're walking into a hornet's nest. This isn't just theft. This is a machine, a money machine, and machines like that don't go quietly." I nodded slowly. "What do you need from me?" "Evidence," she said. "Every scrap you've got, photos, notes, receipts, your grandfather's old letters, anything." She extended her hand. "We do this together, but only if you're willing to see it through to the end." I shook it. Her grip was steel. "Welcome to the war, Mr. Hale." Autumn settled in across the Front Range, the kind of Colorado fall where the air smells like cold stone and pine needles. I spent most mornings driving up to the ridge overlooking Ridgeline Meadows, watching the machine churn. Bulldozers carving the hillside, concrete trucks lining the temporary access road, foundations blooming like gray squares across the valley. That was when the first rumor hit. It came through Facebook, wrapped in bright warning emojis, and written by someone who had never met me. Suspicious older male photographing families, refused to leave when confronted. Authorities contacted. They used a zoomed, grainy shot of me taken from God knows where. My daughter saw it before I did. She texted me, scared, confused. I told her it wasn't true, but lies travel lighter than the truth. They move faster. By Thanksgiving, the rumor had grown legs. Now I was lurking around homes, following joggers, scouting houses. None of it made sense, but sense wasn't the point. The point was poison. Every few weeks I'd visit a diner, a gas station, a grocery store, anywhere nearby, and feel the looks, the whispers. The same pattern every time. Someone recognized me from the posts, pulled out their phone, snapped a picture, shared it in their little HOA echo chambers. Winter came early that year. While ridgeline meadows sprouted frame after frame, wood skeletons rising against the snow, I stood at the overlook with a camera in my gloved hand, documenting every inch. My breath fogged the lens more than once. Security guards in reflective vests, fake authority but real hostility, tried running me off the public roadway 3 separate times. "Move along, sir. I'm on county land. You're making residents uncomfortable. I'm not near any residents." But it didn't matter. Truth didn't matter. The machine had its script, and they stuck to it. Around January, my ex-wife sent me a message. Short, cold. "Stay away from Megan until this is sorted. I mean it." That one dug deeper than any rumor ever could. I read it 3 times, then put the phone away and kept recording. By February, the smear campaign had turned industrial. Fake accounts, edited photos. One post claimed I'd been seen watching children sled at the winter festival. I hadn't been anywhere near it. I'd been in Denver with Amelia that entire day. But facts were irrelevant now. March thawed the snow and the homes took shape. Hundreds of them. Roofs finishing, windows going in, streets paved smooth and black. Families touring model homes, smiling, pointing, unaware they were standing on my grandfather's land. One afternoon I watched a young couple pose for a selfie in front of their future home. The woman laughed. The man lifted her off her feet. Their joy was real. Their ignorance was realer. And still, I waited. April brought spring runoff. The valley turned green. Kids played on sidewalks. Dogs pulled owners along new trails. HOA newsletters bragged about record growth. Karen hosted live streams about community safety, dropping veiled warnings about unidentified individuals near the property line, always accompanied by my photo. I spoke less and less to the few friends I had left. Not because I didn't want to, but because they didn't pick up when I called. By May, all but a handful of houses were complete. Moving trucks lined the streets. Garden hoses watered fresh lawns. Porch lights glowed warm at night. The smear campaign didn't hurt as much anymore, not because it faded, but because repetition dulls even the sharpest blade. Besides, Amelia had warned me, "You cannot fight them now. You must let them finish the crime." So I kept quiet. I stayed away. I watched from the shadows like a ghost haunting his own property. June arrived hot and dry. The last row of homes, Phase 3, finished construction. Open houses every weekend, balloons tied to signs, real estate agents pacing driveways with forced enthusiasm. By July, there was only one home left unsold, Lot 12, a corner unit with a mountain view. I watched a minivan pull up one Saturday morning. A family stepped out, smiles big, eyes wide. I didn't hate them. I hated the people who'd lied to them. I hated the machine that told them this land was theirs. The sale closed midsummer. The last truck pulled away in late August. A porch light flicked on. With that tiny glow, the development was complete. A year of construction, a year of lies. A year of being cast as a villain in a story I never asked to be in. But the moment that porch light glowed, the machine crossed a line it could never step back over. I sat alone in my truck at dusk, overlooking the valley. The rooftops shimmered under the last orange streaks of daylight. Hundreds of homes, families laughing, dogs barking, sprinklers hissing across lawns. They had built an entire world on my land. I lifted my phone, scrolled to one name, and pressed call. Amelia answered before the first ring even finished. "It's Hale," I said quietly. "It's done. All 512. For a moment, there was silence. Then Amelia exhaled, steady, sharp, satisfied. "Good," she said. "Now, Logan, now we take everything back." The night after I called Amelia, I drove home the long way, cutting through Lyons, then Old Stage Road, letting the dark swallow the truck as the sky bruised into deep purples. It should have felt like victory. A year of waiting, of swallowing rumors and humiliation, had finally come to an end. But I didn't feel victorious. I felt still, like the air just before lightning hits. Around 11:14 p.m., as I sat in my recliner with the TV low and a cup of cooling black coffee beside me, my phone buzzed. A single notification. No name, no profile photo, just an email. Subject: you don't know me, but you need this. The address was a burner, the kind people use before disappearing forever. For a few seconds I just stared at it, thumb hovering. Then I opened it. Inside was a single sentence. If you want to bring them down, start with the attachments. Below it were 3 files: PDF, internal zoning summaries, the PDF, audio file, meeting 0422, final, Dem 4A, Excel, Phase 1-3 Rev Report, LWBR XLSX. My heart kicked once, hard. I downloaded them all. The zoning file opened first. Pages of internal memos stamped, Private Whitmore Holdings. Half the signatures were from county staff I recognized. The other half, forged, sloppy, amateurish in places, professional in others. The maps showed what I already suspected. Every permit for Ridgeline Meadows was anchored to the wrong parcel, not mine. A fake ghost parcel listed under an LLC that didn't exist until 18 months ago. A fabricated legal foundation supporting 5 and 12 illegal homes. I leaned back, breath thin. Next, I opened the Excel spreadsheet. Revenue reports, Phase 1, Phase 2, Phase 3. Dates, buyer names, sale prices, kickbacks. Consulting fees, wire transfers, transfers between shell companies, payments to the HOA board. There, next to Karen Whitmore's name, was a line item, Community Engagement Bonus, 130th firm, deliverable, maintain resident compliance, plus suppress external complaints. Suppress external complaints. That meant me. My jaw tightened as I scrolled. Every dollar stolen from my land was right there in front of me. They weren't hiding it from each other. They were bragging about it. They never imagined someone like me would ever see it. Finally, my thumb hovered over the last file, the audio. I hesitated. The room felt suddenly smaller, quiet, too quiet. I pressed play. The recording began with the sound of chairs shifting, papers sliding, one of those corporate conference rooms with bad acoustics and worse intentions. Then a voice I recognized, Whitmore himself, smooth, confident, practiced. All right, let's get this started. Phase 2 is fully sold. Phase 3 is on pace to close by August. Another voice, Karen. She sounded smug, dripping with superiority. Residents are compliant. No more questions about the land issue. I addressed the latest rumor myself. A man chuckled. Which rumor? That the parcel might still belong to that old engineer, Hale. She practically spat my name. We nipped it in the bud. Whitmore laughed. A sound like steel dragged over concrete. Relax, Karen. He's nobody. He had 50 years to do something with that land. He didn't. We did. Another man joined in. And worst case, we settle. Offer him a few $100,000. He'll roll over. Karen snorted. You haven't met the man. He's stubborn. Keeps coming around. Residents say he's watching people. A pause. Then she added, but don't worry. The story's spreading. My stomach nodded. I kept listening. Whitmore's tone dropped. Quiet. Colder. Good. Make him look unhinged. People fear crazy old men more than lawsuits. If he pushes back too hard, we'll just file harassment claims. Maybe a restraining order. Cops always side with the HOA. Someone asked, and the deed? What if he actually tries something legal? Whitmore scoffed. Please, courts move slower than glaciers. By the time some judge notices, we'll be drinking on a beach in the Caymans. The room chuckled. Then came the sentence that would change everything. Because it wasn't careless, it wasn't bravado, it was confession. Whitmore said plainly, look, we all know the deed is real, but the beauty is, perception beats truth. If he can't fight us in public, he'll never fight us in court. So, keep the pressure on. A cornered man eventually leaves. The recording clicked off abruptly. I just sat there, the phone heavy in my hand. They knew. They always knew. From the first bulldozer to the last porch light, they knew the land was mine. They counted on me to break, to quit, to run. But all that smear, all that humiliation, all that whispered poison, it wasn't designed to discredit me. It was designed to exhaust me, and for the first time since this nightmare began, I felt something hotter than anger. Purpose. I picked up my phone and called Amelia. She answered on the first ring. Rhodes, it's Hale. Her voice sharpened instantly. Did something happen? I forwarded the email and all 3 attachments. You're about to hear it, I said. There was a long silence on the other end. Then Amelia inhaled slowly. I hope you're sitting down. I am. Hale. Her voice dropped into something lethal. This isn't just fraud. This is conspiracy. This is racketeering. This is federal prison. I didn't say anything. She continued. You just sent me the equivalent of a nuclear weapon. When this goes to the DA and then the feds, Whitmore won't see sunlight for a decade. I exhaled once, deep and steady. Good. Tomorrow morning, she said, we begin. Bring the deed, bring everything, and get some sleep if you can. I ended the call. For the first time in months, I wasn't afraid. I wasn't angry. I was ready. Morning sunlight spilled through the blinds of Amelia's office like pale knives. She didn't greet me. She didn't offer coffee. She just jerked her chin toward the chair as if to say, sit, we're working. I handed her the deed, the spreadsheets, the printed zoning mismatches, and the flash drive with the audio. She set everything on her desk like she was assembling ammunition. Then she pressed play. Whitmore's laugh filled the room. Karen's smug voice followed. Every word was poison, and the brick walls seemed to absorb it like old wounds remembering pain. When it ended, Amelia didn't look at me. She simply said, in a voice that felt like a blade drawn slowly from a sheath, we can end them. She turned her laptop so I could see a list of agencies, state, federal, financial. Every name was a hammer aimed at some part of Whitmore's empire. I raised a brow. You're going federal? Her eyes glinted. Hail. What they did isn't a mistake. It's a structure, a design, a conspiracy, and conspiracies have lifelines. We cut those lifelines, and the entire thing, she snapped her fingers, collapses. She walked to the whiteboard, 3 boxes already drawn, Citibank's investors. Then she circled Whitmore Holdings, HOA in the center, and drew thick arrows pointing inward. This is their oxygen. We take away oxygen, and the body dies. Slowly, but inevitably. I leaned forward, elbows on my knees. How do we do it? We don't need to prove, not yet. We only need to make their partners afraid. Afraid of being implicated. Afraid of investigations. Afraid of losses. She flipped to the spreadsheet. Hail, once investors learn they were lied to, they'll turn on Whitmore faster than any lawyer could. Then the zoning mismatches. And once the city realizes they approved 512 homes on a non-existent parcel, they'll launch an internal audit that'll chew every clerk, inspector, and contractor to pieces. Then the loan documents. And the banks? They issued loans based on forged land records. Banks do not tolerate embarrassment. I exhaled. So we let them all hit Whitmore at once. No, she corrected. You hit them, quietly, with questions, not accusations. Questions make bureaucrats dig. I nodded slowly. And Whitmore? She clicked to the audio file on the screen again. He's finished. He just doesn't know it yet. She filled a leather satchel with folders and forms. I'm heading downtown, city clerk, state licensing board, the Phase 3 bank, all before lunch. I blinked. All before lunch? She shrugged on her coat like a gunslinger holstering a weapon. What can I say? I'm hungry. She handed me a small digital recorder. People will call you, journalists maybe, HOA board members, Whitmore himself, record everything. I pocketed it. Amelia, how long until they know something's happening? Oh, she said, heading to the door. They'll know within hours. Her hand paused on the knob. And when they realize it's you, a faint smile curved at the corner of her mouth, they'll learn the truth. You didn't lose your land. They lost their future. I walked out into the bright Colorado afternoon, and that's when I saw the domino fall. I wasn't heading to Ridgeline Meadows, not consciously, but my truck must have had its own opinion, because 10 miles later, I found myself turning onto the smooth boulevard leading to the development. Something felt different the moment I approached the monument sign. A white city truck was parked sideways at the entrance. Hazard lights flashing. An orange ladder leaned against the stone pillar. A man in a high-vis city vest stood on the ladder taping a bright red rectangle across the HOA's polished marble welcome sign. Stop work order. City of Boulder, all construction, sales, and modifications halted pending full title investigation. My truck rolled to a stop. I blinked. That was fast. Amelia fast. Before I could fully comprehend it, the glass doors of the HOA office flew open and Karen stormed out, heels clicking, hair bobbing, voice shrill enough to cut gravel. Excuse me, you can't place that here. We have permits. The city inspector didn't even look at her. Ma'am, he said tiredly, your development is under review for title inconsistencies. We have no inconsistencies. He pointed lazily toward the red tag. Talk to the city attorney. I'm just following orders. Karen sputtered, literally sputtered, like a kettle boiling over. This is harassment. This is politically motivated. The inspector shrugged. Could be, or it could be fraud. Not my department. Then, he stapled another red tag to the gatehouse. 3 residents watched from across the street, phones out, whispering. Karen noticed me then. Her eyes went wide, wide and hateful. You, she hissed. You did this. You pathetic, bitter. But she didn't finish. because at that exact moment, a second truck pulled up. This one belonged to the county. The man stepping out carried another packet of paperwork and headed straight for the HOA office. Karen's jaw trembled. I put my truck in drive, and as I rolled past her, slow, steady, she screamed, "You won't win! We have powerful friends. Do you hear me?" I didn't look at her, didn't wave, didn't smirk. I only said under my breath, all I needed was time. Then I drove away, leaving her standing beneath the red tag flapping in the wind, the first domino falling in a chain reaction she could never stop. By the next morning, the footage of the red tags at Ridgeline Meadows had already spread across half the county. Some residents panicked, some demanded explanations. Most blamed government overreach. A few whispered my name. That was all it took for Whitmore to strike back. If Amelia wielded a scalpel, Whitmore chose a hammer. The first blow landed at 7:12 a.m. A link hit my phone, sent by people I hadn't heard from in years. A local news site, barely more than an HOA-run rumor mill, published a hit piece. Dangerous trespasser linked to multiple incidents. HOA warns residents. My face sat beneath the headline looking tired, unshaven, suspicious. The article spun fiction into fact, painting me as a mentally unstable loner, harassing families, and refusing treatment after divorce. Karen provided a statement. "Our residents are terrified. We only want our children safe." Karen Whitmore, HOA president. I almost admired the boldness. Almost. The second blow arrived at 9:03 a.m. A courier handed me an envelope. Inside, temporary restraining order, filed by Ridgeline Meadows HOA reason, harassment, stalking, trespass. I let out a humorless breath. Predictable, desperate, but the TRO had teeth. It forbade me from entering or approaching the development. Coming within 500 yards was enough to put me in cuffs. Amelia warned me about this move, and she warned me what not to do, so I didn't do it. I followed the law. Whitmore did not. The third blow came soon after. A call from an unknown number. I hit record, just like Amelia said. "Mr. Hale," a man purred. "This is Trevor Lang, counsel for Mr. Whitmore. My client is prepared to offer you a very generous settlement." I didn't reply. "We'll wire $200,000 within 24 hours. All we need is your signature relinquishing any financial interest in the disputed land." I still said nothing. His tone cooled. "You're making a mistake. Courts won't side with you. Public opinion already views you as a threat. If this escalates, it won't end well, for you." I hung up. Then came the fourth blow. I didn't go to Ridgeline Meadows. I wasn't allowed to. But I could drive a public county road that cut across the ridge, land the HOA had zero control over. So I parked there, engine off, sitting legally, peacefully, 50 yards outside the TRO boundary. From that vantage point, I could see the development below, rooftops, cul-de-sacs, manicured lawns, a perfect empire built on stolen earth. 10 minutes passed before I saw them. 3 black SUVs rolled up from the direction of the HOA office and stopped at the very edge of the property line. They didn't cross onto the county road. They couldn't. The TRO didn't protect them from me. It protected me from them. 2 guards stepped out. Then a third door opened, and out came Whitmore. Perfect navy suit, expensive haircut, sunglasses hiding the eyes of a man accustomed to winning. Karen climbed out after him, already red-faced and vibrating with rage. They had to walk to me, off their precious pavement, onto dusty gravel, onto land they didn't own, didn't control, didn't expect to stand on. Whitmore stopped 10 feet from my window, still on his side of the TRO line, still technically safe. I rolled the window down halfway. He smiled, that cold politician's smile. "Mr. Hale," he said, "you've caused quite a mess." I didn't answer. He spread his hands like a preacher. "Red tags, city inquiries, investors calling our office non-stop. You're making yourself look irresponsible." Karen snapped, "You're a menace. You're scaring families." I stayed silent. Whitmore's smile flickered. "My offer still stands. Take the settlement and walk away. This is your chance to avoid unpleasant developments." I met his sunglasses with my eyes. "You walked out of your kingdom, Mr. Whitmore." He stiffened. I continued. "You stepped onto a public road to talk to a man you say is irrelevant." Karen's lip curled. "You think this means anything?" I leaned slightly out the window, voice steady. "You built those homes on land that wasn't yours." Whitmore didn't break, but something behind the glasses twitched. I added, "And I'm taking it all back." Karen's face twisted with something between fury and panic. "You won't win. We have influence. We have connections. You're nothing." I didn't even look at her. My eyes stayed on Whitmore. "Funny," I said softly. "That's not what the city inspector said yesterday." The crack appeared, barely visible, but real. Whitmore exhaled slowly through his nose. "We'll see you in court." He turned and walked back toward his SUVs without another word. Karen chased after him, screaming something incoherent. I rolled the window up, shifted into gear, pulled away legally, cleanly, calmly. In my mirror, I saw it. Whitmore no longer looked like a king. He looked like a man who had finally realized the ground beneath his feet didn't belong to him. The crumble didn't happen like thunder. It happened like rot, quiet, steady, then suddenly impossible to ignore. By the time I got home that evening, the first crack had already spread wider than anyone expected. My phone buzzed at 7:41 p.m., a screenshot from Amelia. Ridgeline development, escrow account, frozen pending review, cold, clinical. The kind of message that kills projects before anyone even reaches for a hammer. Banks don't need evidence, they need doubt. And Amelia had handed them a truckload. I leaned back in my chair, letting the truth settle. Whitmore's fuel line had been cut. A little later, another message, this time from Amelia's assistant. 2 major lenders pulled. Emergency investor call at 9 a.m. tomorrow. Ridgeline wasn't just bleeding now, it was hemorrhaging. When sharks smell blood, they don't investigate who's hurt. They just circle and wait for the body to stop moving. I didn't celebrate, but I let myself breathe. The next morning, a voicemail was waiting. "This is Deputy City Attorney Garvey. We'd like to schedule an interview with you regarding potential misrepresentations in the Ridgeline Meadows approval filings." Misrepresentations. Not errors, not questions. That word hits different. I called Amelia. She answered instantly. "You got it?" she asked. I did. A flick of a lighter on her end, one quiet inhale. "The city's awake now," she murmured. "Once they start sniffing around, the rest falls fast." Around noon, I parked again on the county road overlooking Ridgeline Meadows. But today, it wasn't the same place. Where there once had been golf carts, smiling couples, joggers with earbuds, now there were people huddled in clusters, confused, angry, clutching red-tag notices and HOA newsletters like they were court summonses. A man was shouting at a contractor. A woman in yoga pants was near tears. Someone kept repeating, "What does this mean? What does this mean?" Then a man in a Broncos hoodie spotted me. He didn't storm over. He didn't threaten. He walked with the heaviness of someone who just learned there might not be a floor beneath his house. "You Logan?" he asked, stopping at the property line. "I am." He nodded, slow, a marination of fear and resignation. "They told us you were ruining everything," he said quietly. "They said you were trying to get us all kicked out." I didn't look away. "I'm not your enemy," I said. "The people who lied to both of us, they are." His eyes drifted back to the chaos behind him. "My wife keeps asking me if we bought a real house," he murmured. He swallowed. "If you know something, just tell us the truth." "You'll hear it soon," I said. He nodded and stepped back. Then came the moment the universe decided to sweeten the day. A silver sedan flew into the HOA lot like the driver had murder in mind. Door slammed. Out stomped Karen Whitmore. Hair frizzed, makeup smeared, folder clenched like she wanted to beat someone to death with it. She didn't walk into the HOA office. She detonated into it. Even from the road, her voice cracked across the air. "I have kids, Ben. I'm not going to federal prison because you got greedy. I told you to keep it clean." A man shouted something back, defensive, panicked. She steamrolled him. "No, I don't want excuses. Fix it now, or I talk." That did it. Even from this distance, I felt the words hit him like a hammer. Moments later, she burst out of the office, eyes wild, breathing hard, muttering into her phone. "I don't care what the lawyer said. I'm not taking the fall for this. He lied to me. He used me." The car peeled out of the lot so fast gravel spit 10 feet behind her. The first traitor had fled the castle. But the best part? The king finally stepped outside. Whitmore appeared at the property line minutes later. No suit, no sunglasses, tie undone, top button open. He looked like he hadn't slept in 2 days and lost the argument with whatever mirror he'd stood in front of. He called to me across the gravel. "Logan, can we talk?" I rolled my window down 2 inches, no more. "You're not supposed to come near me," I said evenly. He gave a breathy laugh, one with no humor and too much fear. "What do you want?" he asked, voice cracking. "Money, land, a settlement, name it." For the first time since this began, I saw it. Not the arrogance, not the swagger, just pure undiluted panic. He ran a trembling hand through his hair. "The city attorney called," he said softly, like confessing to a priest. There it was. The fatal crack. The one Amelia had been waiting for. I finally answered. "You built an empire on land that wasn't yours." He blinked, defeated. "And now," I said, "you get to find out what happens next." I rolled the window up, slow, deliberate, a quiet execution. Whitmore didn't move, didn't shout, didn't posture. He just stood there, small and exhausted, watching everything he'd built slide out from under him. A man finally realizing the avalanche he had started months ago was now roaring downhill, and he was standing at the bottom. They say courtrooms are cold places, marble, oak, and judgment. But that morning, when I stepped through the double doors with my deed in a weathered leather folder, the air felt electric, like the room itself knew what was coming. Every seat was filled. Homeowners, journalists, city officials, investors who smelled disaster but came anyway. And at the defense table sat Benjamin Whitmore. His tie was new, but his eyes weren't. He looked like a man who hadn't slept in a week, because the monster he created was now chewing through the walls. Judge Hendricks entered, severe, sharp, old school, a man whose patience had a shelf life measured in molecules. "All rise," the bailiff called. Once everyone sat, the judge didn't waste time. "Let's get to it. Counsel, call your first witness." Amelia stood, a small woman, but she carried presence like iron carried weight. "Your Honor, we'd like to begin with a foundational matter. Ownership." She motioned to me. I stepped to the stand, right hand raised, sworn in. My palms weren't sweaty, my heart wasn't racing. This wasn't fear. This was relief arriving dressed as justice. Amelia approached slowly, letting the courtroom quiet enough to hear the hum of the light fixtures. "Mr. Hale, do you recognize this document?" She held up the deed, yellowed edges, tobacco-scented memories of my grandfather embedded deep in the fibers. "Yes," I said. "It's been in my family since 1974. And did you surrender, transfer, sell, donate, reassign, or otherwise convey this land to anyone at any point?" "No, never." She nodded, then turned the deed toward the judge. "Your Honor, this is the original title. My client's name is here, his grandfather's signature is here, and the county's stamp is authentic and verifiable." Whitmore's attorney leapt up. "Objection! Chain of custody!" Amelia didn't even look at him. "Sit down," the judge said. "The deed predates your client's company by 40 years. A few chuckles rippled through the gallery. Amelia continued. "Mr. Hale, where were you living during the 5 years Ridgeline Meadows was being constructed?" "In Colorado Springs, 2 hours away." "And did anyone from Ridgeline, the HOA, the county, or any developer contact you regarding construction on your property?" "No." "And when you returned to your land, how many homes did you find built on it?" I looked straight at Whitmore. "All of them." A wave moved through the room, whispers, gasps, someone muttering, "Jesus." Amelia stepped aside. "No further questions." Whitmore's attorney approached, smug despite everything. "Mr. Hale, isn't it true you didn't visit your land for 5 years?" "Yes." "Isn't it true you didn't fence it, didn't occupy it, didn't monitor it?" "Yes." "And isn't it true you only returned to the land once it had gained significant value?" I smiled politely. "No. I came back to scatter my grandfather's ashes." Silence. Then a low murmuring of sympathy in the gallery. The attorney turned red. He pivoted hard. "No further questions." I stepped down. But the real fireworks hadn't even started. Next came Karen Whitmore. She entered like a wounded animal, still baring teeth but bleeding from a dozen unseen cuts. She raised her right hand, was sworn in, sat stiffly. Amelia approached her with the softness of a surgeon preparing to remove a bullet without anesthesia. "Mrs. Whitmore, are you the HOA president for Ridgeline Meadows?" "Yes." "And did you, at any point, verify the ownership of the land your HOA claims jurisdiction over?" Karen swallowed, hard. "I trusted the developer. That wasn't my question." Karen's eyes darted. That's how it usually works." Amelia lifted a sheet of paper. "This is a screenshot from your HOA's Facebook page. Do you recognize this post?" Karen squinted. Her face drained. There it was, her post smearing me as a suspected stalk taking photos of children. Karen stammered, "That was community concern." "Mrs. Whitmore," Amelia cut in, "you published a false statement accusing my client of criminal behavior with zero evidence. Do you deny that?" I was told." "No. You told people. That's the entire point." Karen's mask cracked. Her voice went shrill. "He was sneaking around. He was filming everything. What was I supposed to think?" Amelia tilted her head. "That the land belonged to him." Dead silence. Karen's breath hitched. Tears threatened. The judge leaned forward. "Mrs. Whitmore, did you at any point personally confirm the parcel ID of the land on which your HOA office sits?" She froze. I don't know." "You don't know," the judge repeated. "Not yes, not no, just I don't know." Karen shrank. Someone in the gallery whispered, "Oh my God." Then, the final blow. Amelia held up a small digital recorder. Your Honor, we have an audio file submitted anonymously to my office. Whitmore's attorney shot up. Objection, we don't know the source. Amelia raised a finger. But authenticated by the State Forensic Audio Lab. Judge Hendricks waved dismissively. Play it. The courtroom held its breath. A click. Static. Then Whitmore's voice filled the room. Who cares about the deed? By the time he figures it out, we'll be on a yacht in Cayman. A few gasps. Someone cursed under their breath, then the nail in the coffin. It's easier to ask for forgiveness than permission. The recording stopped. Karen looked like she'd been shot. Homeowners looked betrayed. Investors looked like they wanted to strangle someone. Whitmore, he didn't even look up. Judge Hendricks took his glasses off, rubbed his brow, and exhaled through his nose like a bull seeing red. Mr. Whitmore, he said calmly, stand. Whitmore rose, barely. The judge's voice dropped to a tone that could cut stone. I've seen fraud. I've seen greed. But I rarely see this level of arrogance. He shifted his gaze to the entire courtroom. The law is not a canvas for men to redraw when it suits them. Then back to Whitmore. You built an entire community on land that you never owned. You falsified filings. You misled buyers. You interfered with county records. And you slandered the rightful owner. He lifted his gavel, but didn't strike yet. Mr. Hale, he turned to me. Do you have anything to say before I issue ruling? I stood slowly, my voice steady, calm, carried by decades of silence, now finally free. Your Honor, I looked straight at Whitmore. He says he built a community. I paused. No. My voice dropped, cold and final. You built a crime scene. I just own the land it's sitting on. Someone in the gallery whispered, oh, damn. Another said, that's it. He's done. The judge lifted the gavel. This court finds in favor of the plaintiff, Mr. Logan Hale. Bang. Ridgeline Development is hereby ordered to cease all operations, provide full restitution, vacate all illegal holdings, and submit all internal records to the district attorney's office. His eyes sharpened. This matter is now referred for criminal investigation. Whitmore sagged like the bones had left his body. Karen covered her face. Homeowners broke into a storm of whispers, fear, relief, shock. I closed my eyes, not in triumph, not in revenge, just release. A weight 5 years heavy finally dropped, but the story wasn't over. Winning the land back was justice. What came next? That was redemption. When the judge's gavel fell, I didn't stay to hear the noise outside. Justice is loud for some people, but for me, it was quiet, almost gentle, like a heavy door finally closing after years of creaking on its hinges. Amelia walked beside me through the courthouse's back hallway, steps echoing off the old stone. You did good, Logan, she said. I had the right guide, I replied. She lifted an eyebrow. Don't butter me up. We still have decisions to make. She was right. Winning the land back didn't magically solve what Whitmore left behind. 512 families were living on soil that legally belonged to me. People with kids, mortgages, hopes, mistakes, just like the rest of us. That evening, I drove out to County Road 14 and sat on my truck's hood, watching the lights of Ridgeline Meadows glow across my grandfather's ridge. A town built on lies, but families living honest lives inside it. If I threw them out, I'd win nothing but an empty hill and bad memories. By morning, I knew exactly what I wanted. I asked Amelia to meet me at the old diner. She arrived with 2 coffees and that tired but fiery look she always carried after a long fight. So, she said, sliding into the booth, what now? I'm not evicting anyone, I said. She didn't speak right away. She just watched me, as if measuring the weight of the words. You're serious. I am. You know you could walk away with millions. I've walked away from a lot of things, I said quietly. Money's never been the one that mattered. She leaned back, exhaled through her nose. So, what do you want, Logan? A land trust. Permanent. The land is protected. The people stay. No HOA ever again. Her lips curved into something close to admiration. You know, you might actually be a better man than you look. Don't spread that rumor, I said. I've worked hard on my grumpy reputation. She laughed, a rare sound from her. The trust took 2 weeks. Long days of signatures, filings, and paperwork thick as winter bark. But when it was done, it felt like the ridge itself exhaled. The families would keep their homes, the land would stay wild under the soil, and the shadow of Whitmore's greed would never reach it again. The night the documents finalized, Megan came up the ridge to find me. She stood beside me in silence for a while, watching dusk settle over the treetops. Mom told me, she said softly, what you did. It was the right thing. She slipped her hand into mine, a simple gesture, but heavier than anything the judge could have given me. I'm proud of you, Dad. I didn't reply, didn't trust my voice to hold steady. A few days later, the town gathered in the high school gym. Homeowners, recruiters, neighbors, everyone. I stepped to the microphone. "My name is Logan Hale," I said, "and I won't be taking your homes." Gasps, tears, shoulders sagging with relief. "The land is going into a public trust," I continued. "No more predatory fees, no more forged papers, no more threats. This ridge belongs to the people who live on it and to the ones who came before." The applause started small, then rose like a tide. After the meeting, people lined up to shake my hand. Some apologized, some thanked me, some just wanted to look me in the eye. But the person I didn't expect to see was Karen. No makeup, no heels, no confidence left. She stood in front of me, twisting her fingers together. I'm sorry," she whispered. I studied her for a moment, not with anger, not even victory, just understanding that her ruin was hers alone to carry. "You have a long road ahead," I said. "I know." "Then walk it." She nodded and stepped away. And strangely, I wished her well. The next morning, I hiked up the ridge with the small tin of my grandfather's ashes. For the first time in years, the wind felt like it welcomed me back. I scattered the last of him across the land he loved. His land, my land, now protected forever. "Rest easy," I whispered. "It's safe now." The breeze carried him out over the valley, and I felt something long locked inside me finally ease open. Not triumph, not revenge, peace. The land was free, the families were safe, justice was done, and for the first time since the whole nightmare began, I breathed like a man who finally made it home.